You have seen pigeons your entire life. On the steps of public buildings, on the edges of fountains, crowded along the upper rails of bridges, sitting so still they look painted onto the structure. You have seen them as chicks. You have seen them fully grown. You have seen them old and slow and missing toes. But think carefully. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? Not a juvenile. Not a bird that is mostly adult-sized but still looks a little awkward. A real baby. A hatchling. A small, helpless, newly born pigeon in the way you might see a newly born sparrow fallen from a nest, or a duckling following its mother along a canal. Most people, when this question is asked, go quiet. They think about it for a moment. They run through their memory. Years, sometimes decades of living in cities surrounded by pigeons, and they realize they cannot picture one. Not a single baby pigeon. Not once. And then the question settles in the way that only genuinely strange questions do. Where are they? There is a version of this question that feels trivial. Of course pigeons reproduce. There are millions of them. Every city on Earth has them. They are one of the most successful urban species in the world, living in closer proximity to humans than almost any other wild bird. They are not hiding. They are famously not hiding. They walk up to you on pavements and take food from your hand. And yet, the babies are invisible. This is not a coincidence. It is not an accident of timing or location. It is the result of something deliberate. A behavioral architecture so precisely calibrated to urban environments that it produces an almost perfect concealment during the most vulnerable weeks of a pigeon's life. What feels like a casual observation is actually a window into something quite extraordinary, into a creature that has been adapting to human environments for so long, and so successfully, that its most critical survival strategies have become essentially invisible to the very humans it lives among. The absence of baby pigeons is a clue. And when you follow that clue all the way, what you find is not what you expected. Most people have a general theory, if they think about it at all. The theory goes something like this. Pigeons must lay eggs somewhere high up, somewhere out of reach, and the young must grow very quickly and look like adults almost immediately. The whole process happens fast and above eye level, and so we simply miss it. This theory is partially correct, but only partially, and the parts it misses are the parts that matter. Because the pigeon is not simply hiding its nest out of instinct. It is not doing what a sparrow does, or what a robin does, building a nest in a tree or a hedge and hoping it is high enough to avoid predators. The pigeon has developed something more sophisticated than that, a relationship with the human-built environment so intimate, so precisely matched to the geometry of cities, that it has effectively turned the urban landscape into an extension of its own biology. The city is the nest. Not metaphorically, functionally. To understand this, you have to go back a long way. Not just decades, but millennia. The domestic pigeon, the bird on your street, on your roof, on the station platform, is descended from the rock dove, Columbolivia, a bird that evolved on coastal cliffs and rocky outcrops around the Mediterranean and across parts of Asia. The rock dove did not nest in trees. It did not build open nests on branches. It nested in crevices, in the narrow gaps and ledges of cliff faces, in the dark, sheltered recesses of rock formations where the eggs would be protected from wind and rain and the sight of predators. Now look at a city building. Look at it the way a bird that evolved on cliff faces would look at it. The window ledges, the gaps between air conditioning units and masonry, the narrow spaces under bridge supports, the recessed channels in architectural facades, the flat gravel rooftops edged with low walls, the dark interior of ventilation ducts, the sheltered spaces beneath solar panels, the unused ledges inside parking structures, 3 levels up where no one ever looks. To a rock dove, a city is not an alien environment. It is a cliff, an endlessly complex, geometrically varied, shelter-rich cliff stretching in all directions, built at extraordinary density, maintained by a species that, from the pigeon's perspective, provides a constant and reliable supply of food. The pigeon did not adapt to cities. Cities accidentally replicated the environment the pigeon already knew. It moved in as naturally as water filling the shape of whatever vessel holds it. And this is where the baby pigeon actually is. Not nowhere. Not hidden in some inaccessible wilderness. Somewhere very close to you, probably. Somewhere inside the building you work in, or the bridge you cross, or the roof structure of the station you use every morning. Tucked into a recess. pressed against a wall, in a location specifically chosen by its parents for three overlapping qualities: shelter from above, darkness from the front, and height sufficient to make ground predators irrelevant. The nest itself is almost comically minimal. Pigeons are not skilled nest builders. They gather a loose collection of sticks, grass, feathers, bits of wire, whatever is available, and arrange it with only approximate care. The nest would not win any architectural awards. It is barely a nest at all by the standards of other birds. But the location makes up for it entirely. The location is chosen with a precision that looks, if you study it long enough, almost architectural. As though the bird has assessed the structural properties of the site and determined that the shelter provided by the surrounding materials makes elaborate nest construction unnecessary. Which, in effect, it has. Inside that tucked-away space, in a nest you will almost certainly never see, 2 eggs are laid. Almost always 2. Almost never 1 or 3. 2. They are white, small, unremarkable to look at. Both parents share the incubation, trading shifts in a pattern that keeps the eggs covered for most of every hour. The male typically sitting through the middle of the day, the female through the night and early morning. After about 18 days, they hatch. And what emerges is nothing like the bird you see on the pavement. The squab, the name for a baby pigeon, is one of the stranger-looking hatchlings in the bird world. It arrives covered in sparse yellow down, with a disproportionately large beak and closed eyes and a quality of physical helplessness so complete that it is difficult to connect to the confident, well-fed adult birds you see strutting around market squares. It cannot regulate its own body temperature. It cannot stand. It cannot feed itself. It is, in these first days, entirely dependent on 2 things: the warmth of its parents' bodies and a substance that exists nowhere else in nature quite the way it exists in the pigeon. Crop milk. This is where the pigeon diverges from almost everything else you know about birds. Most parent birds feed their chicks by bringing food to the nest: insects, seeds, worms, whatever their diet consists of. The chick opens its mouth. The parent deposits food. Simple. Pigeons do something different. Both parents, not just the mother, both parents, produce, inside a specialized section of their digestive tract called the crop, a thick, pale, nutrient-dense secretion. It is triggered by the same hormone that triggers milk production in mammals, prolactin. It contains proteins and fats at concentrations comparable to mammalian milk, along with immune cells and compounds that actively support the developing immune system of the chick. It is, by any functional definition, milk. Produced not by a mammal, but by a bird. Produced not in a mammary gland, but in a digestive organ. Produced by the father as fully as by the mother. The squab feeds by pushing its beak inside the parent's mouth and drinking directly from the crop. It is an intimate, precise feeding system. And for the first several days of its life, it is the only thing the squab consumes. This is not common. Among birds, crop milk is extraordinarily rare, found in pigeons, in flamingos, in emperor penguins, and almost nowhere else. The fact that the pigeon produces it at all speaks to how thoroughly it has evolved around the particular challenge of raising young, in exposed, food-variable urban environments. The baby needs energy-dense nutrition delivered reliably and rapidly. The parents need to feed it without leaving it exposed for long. Crop milk solves both problems simultaneously. Now consider how quickly this all happens. The squab hatches helpless and strange-looking. Within 4 days, it has roughly doubled its weight. Within 10 days, it is dramatically larger than it appeared at hatching, and its adult feathers are beginning to emerge through the down. Within 3 weeks, it is nearly the size of an adult. Within 4 to 6 weeks, it leaves the nest. And when it leaves the nest, it looks almost exactly like the birds you see every day. Not quite. If you know what to look for, a slightly unfinished quality to the feathers, a hint of pink at the cere above the beak that has not yet turned fully white, a marginally softer body condition. You can sometimes identify a juvenile pigeon. But to most observers, walking past on a street, the bird is simply a pigeon. The transition from invisible hatchling to indistinguishable adult takes less time than many school summer holidays. The window during which a baby pigeon is visibly, recognizably a baby pigeon is extremely short. It is spent entirely in a concealed location chosen for its inaccessibility. And then it closes, and the bird walks out into public view as what appears to be a fully formed adult. The baby was never gone. It was just never somewhere you could see it. But there is more to this than the nest location and the growth rate. The pigeon breeds year-round. This is unusual among urban birds. Most birds have a defined breeding season, spring and summer, tied to the availability of food and the longer days that support chick rearing. The pigeon, living in a city where food is available in every month and where the thermal properties of buildings moderate temperature even in winter, has largely decoupled itself from the seasonal cycle. It can nest in February. It can nest in October. It has been documented nesting in every month of the calendar year in temperate cities, and it can raise multiple clutches in a single year, sometimes as many as 5 or 6, each producing 2 squabs. The mathematics of this are staggering. A single breeding pair, reproducing successfully across a full year, can theoretically contribute 10 or 12 young birds to the local population. Those birds mature within months and begin breeding themselves. The population compounds, and every single one of those young birds passes through the same invisible phase, hidden in the same recesses, growing in the same brief, unseen window, emerging onto the same pavements looking like adults that were always there. The city's pigeon population is not what it appears to be. It is not a fixed community of visible birds. It is the permanent visible surface of a much larger, continuously renewing biological process happening in the spaces between the buildings, above the sight lines of the people walking below. There is something else that tends to stop people when they learn it. Pigeons mate for life, not as a romantic generalization, as a behavioral reality, documented and studied across decades of observation. A breeding pair will return to the same nesting site, raise clutch after clutch together, share incubation duties, share crop milk production, and remain bonded to each other in a way that does not change when one breeding season ends and another begins. The pair of pigeons on the ledge above your office window, if they are a breeding pair, may have been together for years, may have raised dozens of young birds together in that same location or nearby, may have developed, through repeated experience, a shared familiarity with the site that makes each successive nesting more efficient than the last. They know the site. They know each other. They know the patterns of human movement below, the times when foot traffic increases, the locations where food is reliably available, the angles from which the nest is and is not visible. This is not instinct in the bare, mechanical sense. This is accumulated experience, learned behavior, memory applied across time to improve outcomes. The bird that walks past your feet is not operating on autopilot. It is drawing on a rich store of specific, local, individual experience of this city, this street, this building, this particular ledge, built across a lifespan that can reach 15 years in favorable conditions. Think about what 15 years means. 15 years in a city, watching the street below, learning the rhythms of the space, recognizing specific humans, as studies have confirmed they do. Pigeons can identify and respond differently to individual human faces, adjusting their behavior based on whether a particular person has been aggressive or benign in the past. The bird that seems to ignore you on the pavement has assessed you. It has made a calculation based on your body language, your pace, your proximity, and possibly your face, and determined that you are not a threat worth the energy of flying away. It has done this thousands of times, with thousands of people, and it has built from all of those interactions a model of human behavior precise enough to navigate a crowded city square without ever being touched. Meanwhile, somewhere in a recess you have never noticed in the building above you, 2 eggs are sitting. 2 parents are taking turns. 2 squabs, or 2 eggs about to become squabs, are completing a cycle that has been running in that same location, or a dozen locations like it within a few hundred meters, for longer than anyone has been paying attention. The city you think you know has this other life running through it. Quiet, unannounced, operating in the spaces you pass under without looking up. It is worth pausing on why this question, where are the baby pigeons, has occurred to so many people and yet been answered by so few. Part of the answer is that we have stopped looking at pigeons. We decided, somewhere in the collective process of building modern cities, that the pigeon was not worth examining. It became background, a default, one of those things that registers only when it is inconvenient. The bird gave us no reason to look more carefully. It did not display itself. It did not court our attention. It went about its business, nesting, feeding, navigating, breeding, raising young, in the most efficient and least conspicuous way the environment allowed. And we, surrounded by the most behaviorally sophisticated common bird in the world, looked at it and saw a rat with wings. The phrase has a history. It came from a newspaper columnist in New York in the 1960s, entered the language, and stuck. It reframed the pigeon, a bird that had served humanity faithfully for thousands of years, that had saved soldiers' lives in wartime, that had been studied and kept and honored across multiple civilizations, as something undesirable, something beneath notice. The pigeon did not change. The story we told about it did. And the story was wrong in almost every particular. The pigeon is not dirty in any meaningful sense beyond the sense in which any wild animal is messy. Its navigation abilities, which we now know involve magnetic sensitivity, solar calculation, infrasound detection, and olfactory mapping, are among the most complex ever documented in a non-human animal. Its crop milk is a biological anomaly. Its pair bonding is more durable than that of many animals considered noble or beautiful. Its adaptation to the human environment is not parasitism or infestation. It is one of the most remarkable examples of behavioral flexibility in the natural world. And its young, the babies that nobody ever sees, are being raised right now. In the recess above the third-floor window. In the gap between the ventilation unit and the parapet. In the dark corner of the overpass where the light never quite reaches. They are there. They are always there. Growing at a pace that seems impossible, fed on something that barely has a name, watched over by parents that will return to that same spot, with each other, for years. You just have to know where not to look. Because that is where the pigeon has always put the things that matter. The next time you see a pigeon, and you will, very soon, because they are everywhere, look at it for a moment as something with a history. That bird has a partner, probably, has a nest somewhere close, has raised young that are now indistinguishable from all the others walking the same square, has a memory of this street, this building, this food source, has navigated back to this specific place from distances you would not attempt without a phone. It has been here, doing all of this, while you were walking past it without a second thought. The baby pigeons were never missing. They were in the places we forgot to look, which turns out to be true of a great deal that the pigeon knows, and we have not yet thought to ask about.